The Stone Zone with legendary Republican strategist and political icon and pundit Roger Stone. Stone has served as a senior campaign aide to 3 Republican presidents. He is a New York Times best-selling author and a longtime friend and advisor of President Donald Trump. As an outspoken libertarian, Stone has appeared on thousands of broadcasts, spoken at countless venues, and lectured before the prestigious Oxford Political Union and the Cambridge Union Society. Due to his 4+ decades in the political and cultural arena, Stone has become a pop culture icon. And now, here's your host, Roger Stone.
Welcome, I'm Roger Stone, and yes, you are back in the Stone Zone. Yesterday on the Stone Zone, we exclusively interviewed Vem Miller. That's the man that the Riverside County, Florida Sheriff and USA Today falsely claimed was involved in an assassination attempt on President Donald Trump in California. Let's recap that, if we may. First of all, Mr. Miller was in possession of 2 firearms, both of which he possessed legally. They were locked in the trunk of his car. He had a concealed carry permit in Nevada, where he is from. The only violation of law here is that in the case of his handgun, the magazine and the gun were under California law, supposed to be stored separately. He did not have expired or fake license plates. He did not have any fake passport. His entry pass to the Trump rally was not a forgery. It was real. It was sent to him by Jesse Law, the Clark County Republican chairman in Nevada. Why? Because Vem Miller is a Trump supporter who had been a Trump caucus captain for their recent delegate selection caucuses. He made no threat against the president. He, in the end, was given a ticket for the gun crime that I described, and he was never questioned by the FBI or by the Secret Service, and lastly, faces no federal charges. This is a fake news story gone wild. So I'm glad we had the opportunity to have Vem Miller, who's a strong Trump supporter, right here on the Stone Zone to sort that out. Folks, he's got one hell of a lawsuit against the Riverside County Sheriff, who keeps doubling down. I just saw on Newsbreak, and if you want to get a compendium of news that's not true, let me urge you to go there. They now say Trump thwarted a 3rd assassination attempt. No, there was no assassination attempt on Sunday in California. Glad to have the opportunity to clear that up. All right, yesterday Kamala Harris said that the choice in this election was between her candidacy and chaos. I would argue that they are the candidates of chaos, particularly when it comes to international affairs. And today, Colonel John Mills, who's one of the leading experts on foreign policy and defense policy, he has served his country in 5 different eras: the Cold War, the peace dividend, the war on terror, the war on chaos, and now, of course, the great power showdown. He is deeply involved in the fight to save our republic. His Substack is indispensable, folks. It's the first thing I read every morning. He's a former director of cybersecurity, policy, strategy, and international affairs at the Department of Defense. Here to help me in the interview with our friend Colonel John Mills is my co-host, Troy Smith, the editor-in-chief of Slingshot.news.
Roger, as always, an honor to be with you here in the Stone Zone again. And as you can see, new place, but we're doing the regular old show. Love being back with you here.
All right, we have the best possible guest you could have today, because Colonel John Mills is an authority on all of these matters. The world does seem to be a powder keg with these new developments regarding the North Koreans. Let's bring Colonel John Mills in with us now.
Hey, Roger and Troy, honor to be on the show. Thank you.
John, really glad that you could make it. I cannot think of a better day to have you with us. What's going on with the Russians and the North Koreans? Could you lay this out for us?
Well, in fall of 2021, it was called the No Limits Agreement, a formal treaty between China and Russia to collapse America. Now, signatories in that also included Iran, North Korea, Venezuela. So, and everyone, the top dog in this is no question about it, China. All of the others are colonies of China. Now, as far as so North Korea's job to collapse America is essentially to take out South Korea and Japan. But there's also a new base that's being established. It's historically Russia owns it. It's a river that separates North Korea and Russia. Now, in the 1800s, that was actually Chinese territory. Russia is one of the European powers. That's one of the things we're borrowed from China, I guess you can say. But now there's a three-way development. 'Cause just 10 miles up that river, 10 miles up that river is Chinese territory. And there's now an agreement for North Korea, China, and Russia to co-develop a naval base up there. And that naval base, once complete, would give China a new fleet operating base where they could essentially slip around. Could go through Russian territory and then out into the deep Pacific, or through the Alaskan Passage to the Arctic, which China claims to be an Arctic power. So this is super important. But North Korea's job is essentially to do a furious missile launch on South Korea and Japan. That's their part of the No Limits Agreement to take down the American-led world system. So very tenuous. We are a world on fire. Kamala has been in power for 4 years. It's only gotten far worse. And yet she wants 4 more years to fix things that she broke over the last 4 years by doing nothing or being bought off, corrupt, or incompetent. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's September, not of 2024. It's September 1939 all over again. And we need Donald J. Trump back in the White House more than ever.
While we're here, I want to get as much, obviously, as I can. The situation between Israel and Iran increasingly perilous. It is a little hard to understand how Iran keeps launching these attacks on Israel, which don't seem to do any serious damage. I don't know if that's because of their Iron Dome or whether these are symbolic attacks, but things still there, very dangerous. I'm a little surprised that the Israelis have not launched a cyber attack, first of all, on Iran to put them into darkness, take away their electrical systems. That would mean no cell phones, no computers. I would seem to me would plunge the country into chaos. Then I would have expected them to hit military targets, followed by taking out their oil fields. Now, all of my friends who are ardent Zionists tell me this is coming, but it has not yet come. You are an expert on this part of the world as well. Tell us what you think's going on.
Well, Israel has established absolute escalation dominance. And as they developed their strategy after October 7th, they realized priority number one is the 3H Club. That's the Houthis, that's Hamas in Gaza, that's Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. All of these are Iranian proxies. The conflict in the Middle East has nothing to do with what our bias and perception of conflict in the Middle East is. Totally different. These are proxies. The 3H Club are proxies of Iran. Iran is a proxy of China. All roads lead to China. This Iran's job in the Middle East, their contribution was to essentially eviscerate Israel and drive America out of the Middle East. So as Israel, after October 7th, yes, they got caught flat-footed. Yes, they got caught by surprise. Yes, we know that detailed planning began on this right after China, Iran, and the others saw the disastrous Biden abandonment and fleeing from Afghanistan, they said, well, obviously the Americans don't care and have no appetite to actually assert their agenda. We'll do it for them. So as Israel has developed, phase 0 was the Iranians planning with the 3H Club for the attack. Phase 1 was the attack on October 7th. Phase 2, phase 0 was the attack on October 7th. Phase 1 was Israel going after Hamas. Phase 2 was the Houthis. Phase 3 is Hezbollah. Phase 4 is regime removal. I think at this point in time, the Iranians are concerned and nervous about regime removal. The Israelis have shown absolute escalation dominance. The supply chain attack on Hezbollah devastated their leadership, the most brilliant supply chain operation in history. And when you talk about cyber, I caught it during the April volley of missiles that was essentially 350 to 0, 350 launched, 350 shot down, essentially. What was not little known was unidentified source in the White House, which usually means Jake Sullivan, said that as many missiles did not even get off the launch pad. Now, being a trained national security professional, I knew that was code word and code talk for we reached in via cyber methods, we being the Five Eyes, we being Israel, and essentially turned the wrong valves at the wrong time. A lot of those ballistic missiles were liquid oxygen propelled and fueled, which is a very dangerous and scientific fueling process that if somebody turns the wrong valve at the wrong time, it's catastrophic. And I think we were probably noodling is what that national security, unidentified national security person was referencing. Was cyber attack reaching in, turning the wrong valves at the wrong time? It was an absolute disaster for Iran, but also Iran has been pummeled time and again. They just tried another missile launch. Didn't work out well. The only thing that does is that depletes our missile stock of what we need for the Western Pacific. But I think Iran is very concerned that, and they got Hania, the Hamas leader, in downtown Tehran. The Iranians have been shown Israel will reach in again and again and again to punish. And I think they're beginning to get very concerned about the viability of the regime. That doesn't mean Israeli or American troops didn't have to invade. The people are extremely unhappy with the mullahs, the president, and the IRGC. If they got support, they would take care of business themselves.
So you're telling us there's actually potentially an uprising by the Iranian people?
Oh, it's been going on since the 90s. Even during the Bush administration, there was at least twice where if Bush had just made statements of support, it would have been remarkably different outcome. Instead, the students, the citizens started rising up, and we did nothing. We did nothing, and they were crushed, and many people were killed and imprisoned because of that. And it happened during the Obama years also, and it's happened. So there is a very, very strong, I mean, Israel has reached in time and time and time again, and they couldn't do it without the assistance of local nationals. I'll tell you that right now. So this shows a broad and pervasive dissatisfaction with the regime inside of Iran.
Troy, I do have a question for our guest, Colonel John Mills. Again, Colonel Mills, Substack, Colonel RET John, indispensable reading, folks. Go to Substack. You want to subscribe. The best foreign and national defense policy stuff out there. I read it first thing every morning. I got to say to you, Colonel, you are prolific. You are cranking out the truth. It's really very impressive. Troy, we'll come back.
Colonel Mills, my question to you is about China and its involvement with Iran, because we've seen during the Biden administration that Iran has become the #1 oil exporter to China. So I'm wondering how much of a role China will play in keeping Iran afloat as we see Israel and the United States kind of circling the wagons here.
Well, absolutely. Iran would not exist. Iran could not breathe if it wasn't connected to China and Chinese gas and oil sales. And we do all these trade sanctions, and being at least at the current time, the reserve currency allows us to do all these trade sanctions. But you can't set and forget these sanctions. You have to every 30 days adjust because they're essentially developing a second world economy and getting around many of our trade restrictions and financial controls. But yeah, Iran would not exist, and they're working on a pipeline from Iran through, of all places, Afghanistan, Pakistan to China, so they can flow the oil. Because right now, China imports 50% of its energy. Much of that 50% goes through the very narrow, it's like less than 3 mile wide passage of the Malacca Straits next to Singapore, which could be shut down with a couple of mines in the water. No shipping firm would allow their ship to move through that. They charge wartime rates. But yeah, Iran would not exist if it wasn't for Chinese gas and oil sales. And China has a massive intelligence, military, and economic footprint. I mean, during the Shah days, everybody talks about the American footprint in Iran during the days of the Shah. Yeah, it's 10x that of China with the mullahs and the IRGC right now inside of China. It's a colony. Iran is a colony of China. It's as simple as that.
Colonel Mills, the American intelligence services have made a very strong case publicly that Iran has plans to assassinate President Donald Trump. They recently indicted several Iranians who are not in the country, I believe, charging them with cyber crimes in connection with efforts to infiltrate both the Harris and the Trump campaigns. This obviously, while it does have a certain logic, I mean, President Donald Trump put in place the harsh sanctions which had driven Iran to the brink of bankruptcy. The the sanctions were so harsh, not even the Chinese would buy oil from the Iranians. And of course, once Joe Biden became president, those sanctions were canceled. This is Obama's grand vision, by the way. They unfroze billions of dollars in assets, more than $190 billion, which of course the Iranians have used to fund their nuclear weapons destruction or the nuclear weapons development program, and to finance Hamas, Hezbollah, these attacks on Israel. How close do you think, first of all, the Iranians are to having a tactical, usable nuclear weapon?
I would say at this point in time, for almost 30 years, we've been saying Iran is on the verge of having a nuclear weapon. I think it's ridiculous. At this point in time, we just have to presume they have a small number of crude, unreliable North Korean warheads, because just about all of their missiles, whether it be cruise missiles, whether it be ballistic missiles, semi-ballistic missiles, essentially are all of Chinese, North Korean, or Russian heritage. And I'm sure that they have a small number of North Korean warheads that are probably not reliable, probably not trustworthy, but they have them. And so the silliness of the intelligence community saying they're 1 inch closer to having nuclear weapons. I mean, we've been saying that for 30 years. I think we must presume the worst. They have them. Again, it's small number, North Korean, probably not reliable or safe, but they have them. So I think it's a very real possibility, and they may go the nuclear option because Iran, I think, is at the point they are concerned with regime survival at this point.
Troy, you get the next question.
Well, thank you, Roger. Colonel Mills, my question to you is about the alliance between China and Russia. Now, traditionally, these two countries have been really at odds with each other, but you kind of have illustrated here they're getting closer and closer. My question is Russia really into this, or are they kind of going along because the United States is so leaderless and in such a bad position right now? And in the future, do you see that bond growing closer? Do you think they'll eventually kind of have tensions and split apart like they seem to always do?
Well, you're right. It has been a tenuous relationship, but no question about it. At this point in time, the senior partner is Xi of China. Russia would not exist today. They are a colony of China. This is not that complicated. The war in Ukraine would not be going on if it wasn't for sustainment. Nobody else makes the compatible ammunition that Russia needs. Nobody, except for China, North Korea, and Iran. And part of the game is a lot of that has been produced in Iran and North Korea for Russia, but it's all been with Chinese machinery and factories that were set up in Iran and North Korea. So this plausible deniability is a canard. But Russia would simply not exist and have been sustained to this point if it wasn't for the aid of China. And NATO, I know we have problems with NATO and the EU, but they've been extremely harsh with China in the last couple of months. But it's like, hello, wake up. This is 2 years ago. It was obvious Russia was receiving stocks of arms and ammunition because nobody else in the world makes it. Nobody except for China and their machine tools. So this is Russia is a colony. There's kind of misinterpretations. The GDP of Russia is roughly $1 trillion. The lies of China, we don't even know for sure. I mean, our own economic stats we are no longer trustworthy, but they're roughly a $25 trillion economy. So it's 20. The economy in China is 25 times the size of Russia. It's not even close. The first thing do, if they were victorious, which I don't think they will be with Donald J. Trump in the White House, the first thing China would do is gobble up Russia because Russia has a incredibly declining birth rate. It has its eastern parts of its country essentially unpopulated. When China looks at it, it's just like they're looking at Canada. It's lunch, it's opportunity. So Russia's a colony of China.
What is the current state of the Russian army, the Russian military? Have they suffered the kind of attrition that the Ukrainians have? And what kind of role does that play in their possible future with China?
Well, again, Russia would not have been able to sustain the war if it wasn't for Chinese help, just simply. We even have reports of North Koreans on the battlefront fighting. It doesn't surprise me at all. It's essentially on the ground. It's a stalemate. It is. Now, there is grinding, slow Russian advances in the Donbass, but these are tactical. They're not operational or strategic. The Ukrainians have a fairly substantial footprint inside of Russia in the Kursk Oblast. Now, I think Zelensky is getting the picture, regardless of who wins. We have lost an appetite to support him. Doesn't even matter. I think they know even if Harris was able to pull off a victory or that 1 o'clock in the morning spike of votes on November 6th, that the days of their aid are over and rapidly coming. It's going to be negotiated. It has to be negotiated. But that's not what Putin promised Xi. It's not what Xi wanted. But I think it has to be a negotiated end. Again, when we've said we're going to allow the LRASM missiles, the JASM missiles, to be fired off of F-16s. I don't think that's happened yet. And again, I say the Ukrainians have been extremely innovative on their cross-border activity with their own homemade drones. They've dominated the Black Sea. They've dominated the air, really, and they've reached deep. Why in the world would we allow them to fire the JASM at this point in time? Absolutely bad policy, bad decision, provocative. It's going to be a negotiated end. It's a stalemate on the ground.
Does it not? There's no negotiations or peace talks going on now whatsoever. This seems to me to be an unrealistic policy on behalf of the Harris-Biden administration. No.
Well, I think they're essentially doing nothing at this point in time. We don't have a president. We haven't had a president since January of 21. I assert there's been an unlawful 25th Amendment transfer of power to Harris. Essentially, we have nobody, we have a GS-15 in the White House Situation Room having the nuclear codes. Harris doesn't even know what the nuclear codes are. We essentially are rudderless as a nation right now. We have a world on fire. The American domestic situation is on fire. We don't have any adult leadership. And yeah, I think they've essentially done nothing. It's a grinding battle on the battlefront in Ukraine, and zero American leadership. And the only thing Jake Sullivan is doing is giving the names of Mossad agents to Iran.
Yeah, it's really extraordinary. All right, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. Colonel John Mills, again, check out his Substack. Give us that address, Colonel Mills.
Thank you, Roger. It's Colonel R.E.T. John, Colonel Rhett John Substack, and then Colonel Rhett John 2 back on X. I'm back on X, Colonel Rhett John 2.
I have to tell you, Colonel, you're among our most popular guests whenever we have you on. Big jump in our viewership, because you bring years and years of experience and wisdom on national defense and national security and international policy. We're grateful to have you jump in today. Many thanks for joining us in the Stone Zone.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back to talk politics. Folks, we just went through a hurricane in Florida, and although I'm thanking the Lord that we in South Florida essentially escaped the devastation that others in North Florida and Georgia and North Carolina and Virginia and Tennessee suffered, it did make me think yet again about the vulnerability of my cell phone. The cell phone towers are extremely vulnerable to adverse weather as well as hackers and terrorists. That's why I went out and got the Iridium 9555 phone, which operates off the Iridium proprietary satellite network. So you don't need the cell towers. You don't even need electricity, because this phone is recharged with solar batteries powered by the sun. Let's take a look.
This is Roger Stone. Remember when AT&T's cell phone outage left millions, including me, stranded without a means to communicate with loved ones, business associates, or even for emergency services? You see, cellular networks are particularly vulnerable, big targets for hackers and terrorists, as well as vulnerable to hurricanes and other natural disasters. So if your cell phone goes down, how will you communicate? That's why I got the Iridium 9555 satellite phone and service. I'm using the proprietary Iridium satellite service. Cell networks only cover about 7% of the Earth, while the Iridium system covers 100% of the Earth. You can call or text from any place you can see the sky. These are trusted by U.S. military and government officials everywhere. All calls are encrypted, safe and secure. No eavesdropping, no hacking. It's the reason the U.S. military uses Iridium phones, and the U.S. Senate uses satellite phones for their secure phone calls. You too can ensure your privacy by using our Iridium proprietary satellite network. Just go to sat123.com/Roger. No tracking, and no one can listen to your calls. No one will ever read your text but the person you're sending them to. And more importantly, big tech cannot steal and then sell your data. You can get the Iridium 9555 phone at no cost if you sign up for a plan with a 24-month agreement. A monthly plan is only $95.95, and you get the phone for free. You can get a plan with us for as little as $85.95. And then there are discounted family share plans with up to 3 free phones. Those are also available. The Iridium 9555 satellite phone will work from anywhere on Earth with no exceptions. Oh, and how do you keep your satellite phone charged in the event of an electrical grid shutdown? You're going to want our solar-powered satellite phone recharger. You can get it all by going to sat123.com/Roger. You need to have secure communications. Get your Iridium 9555 phone now.
Right, folks, please check it out. I think you should recognize that this phone operates any place where you can see the sun. And of course, all of your cell phone calls, all of your text messages are entirely encrypted. They cannot be hacked or read by any third party. And best yet, nobody steals your data to go out and sell it. All right, let's continue. Troy, a lot going on in politics. To me, this is amazing. Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia issues an executive order which has the effect of saying you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in our elections. Sounds like common sense to me, but evidently the U.S. Department of Justice doesn't agree. It's very hard for me to understand what their argument could be, but they're going into federal court to try to allow illegals to be able to vote in Virginia. Let's take a look at the video.
Why not just honor that 90-day period?
Well, let me just first begin. It's anything but a purging program. It begins with someone identifying themselves as a non-citizen. And I guess I would posit back to you, do you think that non-citizens, when they've self-identified as a non-citizen, should stay on the voter roll and therefore be in a position to potentially vote in a presidential election?
I don't think any non-citizen should vote. How are they self-identifying? How does that happen?
They actually tick a box that says, I am a non-citizen, or they do not answer the question that they are a citizen, and therefore they self-identify that they are not a citizen in the United States of America. And this is why this is so out of bounds in my mind from the Justice Department. They fully understand this. They understand the process starts with a person self-identifying as a non-citizen, and then there is a match with that person's name on the voter rolls, and they are given not just one, but up to 3 times in order to try to cure it. And this is why I find this to be a very, very unreal moment that is stunning, that they filed this suit 25 days before a presidential election, when in fact this has been going on in accordance with our Constitution, the federal Constitution, and state law since 2006.
We seem to be fighting about this across the country. They seem intent on making sure that illegals are allowed to vote. By the way, I thought Governor Youngkin did a great job of putting Fake Tapper in his place there. Troy, what do you make of this? And then let's move on with more political news.
Well, Roger, the issue of voter rolls, in my opinion, has been largely made to be one of the biggest issues of the country on purpose. And that's because the voter rolls are always changing. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that think that we can clean up the voter rolls and that we'll have these clean voter rolls going into the election, when in actuality, the voter rolls never stop changing. In fact, every time in many states that somebody signs up to get a driver's license, they're added to the voter rolls. Every minute somebody moves out of one state or one country or one county or one city. People move and they don't take themselves off the voter rolls. So these things are always changing. I think really what this comes down to, Roger, is the internal election personnel. We have people that are running these election systems that are put in place by both political parties who have a goal in creating a result that has nothing to do with the actual result or the actual votes that are being cast. We've seen this take place in Baltimore. We've seen this take place in Maryland, where I come from, and we've seen it take place in places like Detroit and across the country where the numbers just don't add up. I personally, in my opinion, I think the voter rolls are something they want us to be fixated on, but it is incredibly interesting that the DOJ that has allowed Hunter Biden to be running free, allowed Joe Biden open corruption. In fact, they found that Joe Biden illegally held classified documents in his home, but they decided that they weren't going to refer charges because he's an old man. And you know, Roger, I think it just speaks to the politicization of this organization, you know, going forward. I think people are just going to trust them less and less, because when they do finally do something, it's almost always to combat the truth. We have a lot of people combating the truth here on the Stone Zone. We show it often. We have another video I want you to comment on, Roger, and this is one of your favorites. Governor Tim Walz was at a rally yesterday, and he was hammering this point that the Democrats are now kind of pushing out there, trying to get people excited about the idea that Trump has to release his medical records. Kamala Harris has released her medical records, and they're saying, oh, see, Trump has to do this now. So I want to roll this and then get your thoughts on the party that nominated Joe Biden, claiming that they want to see people's medical records. Pretty amazing stuff. Let's roll that.
She has been making this clear for a long time. She's ready to be commander-in-chief, and she released her medical records. Straight, clean bill of health. Physical, mental stamina to do the job. Now, I think you all know where I'm going with this, don't you? We're all wondering. Donald Trump said that he would release his numbers. He would release his medical records. Look, he says now, I think he forgot to do it. He's been forgetting things. We'll give him a break on this. But Kamala Harris is right on this. Watch his rallies. He's confused. He's a nearly 80-year-old man. He's ranting and rambling until people get bored and leave his rallies. That's happening. But here's the thing about this. It would be funny if it wasn't so dangerous.
This is hysterical. Right back to Alinsky's rules. Always accuse your opponents and enemies of that which you yourself are doing. For 4 years, Joe Biden would not release his medical records, and more importantly, he would not take a cognitive test. So while Kamala Harris may be healthy, unfortunately, these tests can't test intelligence, which she seems to have none of whatsoever. It's a fake issue, but that's because they're out of issues. They can't run on the robust nature of our current economy because the economy is not strong. They can't run on their new job numbers because, as the economic, housing, and mortgage expert Barry Habib told us on my 77 WABC radio show last Sunday, these latest jobs numbers are just as fake as the last job numbers they submitted. They certainly can't run on the stability of affairs around the world. We're on the verge of World War III, and now it appears 3 different theaters. So these personal attacks on Trump. Trump is not the slightest bit forgetful. In fact, he's obviously keeping a much heavier campaign schedule than Kamala Harris, who can't answer simple questions. Those are cheap shots from people who know they're on the verge of losing. That's how I read that. How do you read it?
Well, it's desperation to me. I mean, that's what it looks like. They are desperate because they replaced a candidate who literally can't talk, who literally can't go into public, who literally was probably the most public display of a dementia case we've ever seen in the history of our country. I'm talking television. We've never seen a more public deterioration than that. And they all said, Roger, remember, they said, Eric Swalwell said on the Capitol steps that Biden puts the Democrats to shame in the meetings behind closed doors. And Kamala Harris says they can't believe this guy is like the Energizer Bunny behind closed doors. And remember, the Her report, where they did the interview, Biden goes out after the Her report, which clearly states that he's got mental problems, and he touts it as a total vindication. He dresses down Peter Doocy on national television and then accuses the Her people, the Her investigators, of bringing up his dead son. And then we find out that he didn't even bring up, the investigators didn't bring up the dead son. Biden brought up the dead son because he brings him up every time. And the fight, Roger, has been since then, as far as I know, the tapes still haven't been released, of Biden's interview with the Her report. This is desperation, and I think it serves on a second level to get the focus away from Joe Biden, away from the Democrats, away from their failures and who they stuck in the White House right now, the guy who made your gas $7 a gallon, and his accomplice, the woman who's running in his place, who, by the way, they put at the top of the ticket without getting one single vote. I mean, not one vote, Roger. We have a clip from Kamala Harris recently talking to some media. She's getting more desperate, as I think this indicates. She's doing more interviews now because she literally doesn't have a choice, because she's tanking in the polls, and the sugar high of her entrance into the race just a couple months before the election is wearing off. This latest attack she's waging is on Donald Trump, and it's it's the calling card of the left. They're calling him racist. They're saying Donald Trump used to rent to black families, even though he's been friends with Rosa Parks, even though he's been, you see pictures of him with all these black leaders, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, whoever. They're calling him racist. So let's roll that clip of Vice President Kamala Harris and then get Roger's thoughts on them digging this racist thing back up after seemingly a few years of putting it to bed.
Is pointing out that there are two very different visions for our nation that are being presented to voters right now. On the one side, you've got Donald Trump, who wants to take us backward. Donald Trump, who, let's not forget, when he was renting his apartments and his property, refused to rent to black families. Donald Trump, who, as it relates to 5 young black men, they were actually teenagers and Latinos, the Central Park 5, he took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for their execution. They were innocent. Donald Trump, who referred to the first black president and suggested, remember the birtherism lies, that he couldn't have been born in the United States. Donald Trump, who in his Project 2025, the various things that would happen would include allowing it or making it easier for companies to not give workers overtime pay. We capped the cost of prescription medication at $2,000 a year for seniors and capped the cost of insulin at $35 for our seniors. That's our grandparents, our parents. Black folks are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. His plan would eliminate that cap. So part of the reason that I am out here talking with folks, listening to folks, is to make sure that I am communicating and letting them know about the real contrast that is being presented. Because my bottom line is this. I know the power that people have to make a difference. And I respect that power. And I am out here doing the work of earning then the vote so that we can get to the job of continuing to move forward. And for me, that is about pushing for an opportunity economy, which is about tapping into the ambitions and the aspirations of folks and doing the work of investing in community, investing in industries, strengthening our economy, and giving people dignity in the process.
This whole question is an absurdity. It is Kamala Harris, I will remind you, who joked about smoking marijuana in college while listening to Biggie and Tupac. Of course, then when we checked, Biggie and Tupac were unknown at that point and never recorded anything. But it was also Kamala Harris who went on as a district attorney to prosecute thousands of African Americans for the first time nonviolent crime of possession of small amounts of drugs. And in some cases, left those people in prison beyond the term of their incarceration as ordered by the courts, so she could have the state use them for free labor. If you want to hear a real story of racism, let's take a look at this short documentary. It's only about 3 minutes of what she did to a black woman named Cherie Peoples.
So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy.
She had me arrested and prosecuted because my handicapped daughter was sick in the hospital.
Kamala, Kamala, I have a story to tell. Why you locked Cherie up and threw her in the cell? Her daughter has anemia, some call it sickle cell. She missed too many school days, so you locked her mom in jail. Kamala, I got a story to tell. Why you locked Cherie up? Her daughter wasn't feeling too well. She had sickle cell anemia. It attacks her red blood cells. When she was down sick in the hospital, you put her mom in jail. Single black mom in LA, struggling just trying to make it.
And we're gonna do it again in 2024.
Now you pander for the black vote, so now you claim half Jamaican. You race flip for occasions. You say you were East Asian. You never cared about no America. You allowed this invasion. Kamala, Kamala, I have a story to tell. Why you locked Cherie up and threw her in the cell? Her daughter has anemia, some call it sickle cell. She missed too many school days, so you locked her mom in jail.
I want money.
You know what's funny? Kamala be loving the money. She was willing to lock up the parents they say for truancy, $30 per day.
I'm gonna start prosecuting parents for truancy.
Don't take my word, just ask Sheree. That's how schools in California get paid. Brought to you by the California DA, Miss Kamala.
They kept pressuring me to plead guilty and spend a year in jail.
Kamala, Kamala, I have a story to tell. Why you locked Sheree up and threw her in the cell? Her daughter has anemia, some call it sickle cell. She missed too many school days, so you locked her mom in jail. Sheree had to fight till she was broke. Her little daughter Shayla had a stroke.
My hand is doing okay, I guess.
Kamala Harris ain't nothing but a joke. She locked up blacks over marijuana smoke. But let me get back to the details. Sheree spent 2 years fighting jail. She lost her job and got evicted. It's a true story, it ain't scripted. And the word that's around town, that left and hyena got passed around. Who is Mr. Willie Brown? You can go ask Judge Joe Brown. But back to my story.
I don't agree what my Kamala Harris did to my mom.
Shelley was traumatized. I seen the pain and hurt in her eyes. Kamala should apologize. Kamala, I have a story to tell. Why you locked Sheree up and threw her in the cell? Her daughter has anemia, some call it sickle cell. She missed too many school days, so you locked her mom in jail.
My homicide prosecutors said when you go over there, look really mean.
Kamala, I have a story to tell. Why you locked Sheree up and threw her in the cell? Her daughter has anemia, some call it sickle cell. She missed too many school days, so you locked her mom in jail.
The truancy program got a lot of criticism too. Did you actually lock anybody up?
No, we never locked anybody up. We did prosecute some cases, but far few, only about 20.
My message to all Americans, especially Black Americans, do not trust Kamala Harris.
The artist there was Silent J, the maker of that documentary, our friend Joel Gilbert. Troy, I know you were rocking out during that, but it's a serious story. The short documentary, Arrested by Kamala, has now had over 5 million views on the internet. People are beginning to learn more about the real Kamala Harris. Who's the racist? Who has abused Black people? Why, that would be Kamala Harris. All right, Troy, what else you got for us?
Well, Roger, we got more to discuss here today. And, it's interesting to me, the people that they are trotting out to support Kamala Harris, because each of them is flawed in their own way. You have Tim Walz, who basically lived back and forth from China. I believe you said he visited China 33 times, and that's been documented. He's got his own flaws. You look at some of these other individuals, and another one is Raphael Warnock, Senator Warnock from Georgia. He was on the news talking about the same thing that Kamala was just saying now. And I find this interesting, Roger, because, of Donald Trump and Raphael Warnock, only one of them has tried to hit a Black person with their car, and that's Raphael Warnock. A few years ago, he was accused of backing his car into his ex-wife and attempting to kill her as he was trying to go out to the airport. And look, the press showed up. They interviewed her. She's sobbing. We have the video. So I want to roll that video of the sobbing wife so we can see what Raphael Warnock really is, and then roll the clip of him bashing Donald Trump on CNN. And then, Roger, get your thoughts on the senator and why he continues to open his mouth when he attempted to kill a Black woman. Let's roll that.
And he's like, I gotta get to the airport. I gotta go. Close the door. And I was like, please. And he's like, well, I close the door. I'm leaving. And I was like, just hear me out. If your mom died and I had the kids, wouldn't you want me to let them go with you to the funeral? And he just starts backing the car up. And he wasn't going fast. Like, I'm not bleeding, but I just can't believe he would run me over.
You think it was intentional?
He saw me standing right there. I wasn't far. I was touching my daughter in the car seat.
talk to him. He knew that he ran over your foot?
This man's running for United States Senate, and all he cares about right now is his reputation. I work at the mayor's office, and this is a big problem.
Okay.
I've been trying to be very quiet about the way that he is for the sake of my kids and his reputation. He's the pastor at Ebenezer. I have not involved people. I told the mayor we were getting a divorce simply because I report to one level beneath her, and I needed her to know in advance, but I've tried to keep the way that he acts under wraps for a long time, and today he crossed the line. So that is what is going on here, and he's a great actor. He is phenomenal at putting on a really good show.
And all of a sudden she's screaming that I ran over her foot. I don't believe it. But I don't, certainly that was not my intent.
Yeah, okay.
Certainly not.
My head was in the car, and you drove
Officer,
off. Why would you
officer,
drive while
because
my
it's,
head is in
because
the
it's how, it was not, that's not true. Officer, because this goes on over and over again.
Listen, let me tell you something this morning. Black men are not going to vote for Donald Trump in any significant numbers. There'll be some. We're not a monolith. But as black folk in general and black men in particular consider who Donald Trump is, as they consider the fact that this is the man who literally took out a full-page ad in the New York Times saying that these young teenagers back in the 1980s who were accused of a horrific crime should receive the death penalty. And then when it was proven that the exonerated five, the Central Park Five, were actually innocent, Donald Trump has shown no deal of concern about what they went through, no bit of contrition about it. He's doubled down on his position. This is who he is. And black men know that as they watch him deal with his own criminal problems and concerns, that the criminal justice system certainly doesn't handle them the way it handles him. On the other hand, you've got Kamala Harris, who in her work as a prosecutor found ways to give people a path towards a better life, who has spent her whole life as a lawyer, as a senator, and now as vice president, centering the concerns of ordinary people. Again, we're not a monolith, but this idea that large numbers of black men are going to vote for Donald Trump is not going to happen.
Again, there's a guy who tried to run over a black woman. There's a couple things you can always count on with the Democrats. The end of every campaign, they'll try to scare senior citizens saying that Trump is going to cut your Social Security. Oh, it's in the Project 2025 agenda. That's great, but that's not Donald Trump's platform, and that he's opposed to that. He's going to sign a federal abortion ban. Walsh, Tampon Timmy, and Kamala keep repeating this line over and over and over again. It's a lie. And then accusing Donald Trump, under whom we had the lowest level of black unemployment in American history, of being a racist. Donald Trump, who passed the first meaningful criminal justice reforms, reforming laws that fell disproportionately on people of color through his First Step Act and his Second Chance Act. So these are the typical tactics of people who are on the verge of losing, Troy. It's going to get increasingly hysterical in these final days. I still believe the election is extraordinarily close, not because it should be, because actually, given her inability to perform as a candidate, it shouldn't be close at all. But I've never seen the kind of mainstream media bias and fraudulence like I'm seeing in this election. 60 Minutes, we can't show things on 60 Minutes. We can't prove, says Leslie Stahl. They got caught red-handed feeding a completely different answer to a question regarding the Middle East to Kamala Harris. 60 Minutes, you're busted. When is Leslie Stahl going to apologize to Trump, by the way, because it's now been proven that the Obama administration was spying on the Trump campaign. She insisted there was no proof. Leslie, time to step up and do the right thing and issue an apology. Folks, I want to remind you that you can watch us on Worldview Tube every weekday at 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern. But if you can't catch us there, you can go to rumble.com/Roger Stone, rumble.com/Roger Stone. You see the follow button there. You can click on that. And once you followed us, once you've downloaded the app and you followed us, you can set your notification so they will tell you every day, remind you when we're in the Stone Zone. So please do that for us. I want to thank the great crew at Worldview Tube, help us with the production of our daily show. And don't forget to check out my 77 WABC radio show every Sunday from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock Eastern. There you can go to WABCradio.com. That's about it for us today. Finally, before we jump off, please jump over to mypillow.com where my promo code is Stone, mypillow.com. We have many great products there. You can support our good friend Mike Lindell, another fighter for freedom, free speech, and election integrity. And you can support our work here at the Stone Zone by going to mypillow.com and using promo code STONE. Whether it's the dog beds or the pet blankets, two of my absolute favorites, or the extraordinarily absorbent bath and shower towels, or the luxurious bed sheets, and many, many products that are not bedding related. There's many, many great things at mypillow.com. Mike has a 30-day money-back guarantee, but when you go there, don't forget to use the promo code STONE. All right. That's it for us today. On behalf of my co-host, Troy Smith, the editor-in-chief of Slingshot.news, and by the way, hop over there and you can subscribe for free. I want to say thanks for joining us. God bless you and Godspeed, and we'll see you tomorrow.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?